Newsgram, 11th of February 2024, IMF highlights Maldives' high debt as a BRI partner. China bought out the ruling party in the Maldives to escape its debt trap and used large bribes. The International Monetary Fund warns that the Maldives, an archipelago in the Indian Ocean among the first South Asian nations to sign up for Beijing's Belt and Road Initiative, is at risk of experiencing debt distress. The phrase describes countries that need debt restructuring because they cannot fulfill their financial commitments. The IMF warning from February 6 coincides with the country's new president, Mohamed Muizzu, forging stronger connections with China, which has promised to help the tiny nation. After defeating former President Ibrahim Mohamed Sully, who had voiced reservations about the cost of China's construction projects in the nation during his period in office, the Chinese-sponsored Muizzu entered power in November. 10 years ago, China made its mark in the Maldives when, as part of an administration that supported Beijing, it constructed housing projects on land reclaimed from the sea, a 4-lane bridge linking the capital, Male, with the international airport on a separate island. Assistant Geopolitics and International Relations Professor at Manipal Academy of Higher Education in India, Sankalp Gurjar, told VOA that even the previous government had flagged the issue that Maldives is seriously indebted to China. The speaker stated that the gross domestic product of the Maldives is slightly over $5 billion, which makes the country's colossal debt problematic, particularly considering the need for foreign cash to acquire bare essentials like food and fuel. Based on World Bank data, the Maldives' outstanding debt to China amounts to $1.37 billion, or almost 40% of the nation's total public debt. As a result, Beijing is now its largest bilateral creditor. In its assessment, the IMF predicted 5% growth for the Maldives economy this year. However, it also demanded urgent policy adjustment, stating that the nation is still highly vulnerable to external and overall debt distress. China was not mentioned. Muizzu claimed he had pleaded with Chinese authorities to reorganize the repayment of loans given to his nation during a trip to Beijing last month. His visit indicated that he is strengthening his relationship with Beijing and moving away from the pro-India stance of the previous administration. Muizzu welcomed China's infrastructure initiatives in his nation and called Beijing one of our closest allies and development partners. He expressed his eagerness to pursue cooperation under China's Belt and Road program, which includes expanding the nation's main airport and commercial port. According to analysts, the nation's enormous debt load makes it the most recent South Asian country whose economy has been strained by Chinese loans for infrastructure development. To create a commercial and transportation corridor across Asia, China has constructed ports, bridges, and highways in nations ranging from Bangladesh to Nepal to Sri Lanka to Pakistan. In 2022, Sri Lanka ran out of foreign currency to pay its international debt. This issue was partially attributed to the country's over-reliance on Chinese borrowing. Beijing disputes claims that the economic problems of developing economies result from the loans it makes to them. According to Manoj Joshi, senior scholar at the Observer Research Foundation in New Delhi, South Asian nations want China to join its Belt and Road Initiative because of their severe infrastructure deficit. Joshi spoke with VOA about this. The reasoning goes, whoever gives the money, let's build the infrastructure, but Joshi said that in most cases, this leads to poorly planned and financed projects that become a burden. The Maldives undoubtedly have a financial issue due to loans taken out for Chinese projects, which were most likely granted for geopolitical reasons. However, caution has increased among other nations, including China, he continued. Despite being a small nation with only 500,000 citizens, the Maldives has great geopolitical significance since the more than 1,100 tiny islands in the Indian Ocean are situated near important waterways used by a large portion of Chinese traffic. According to Maldivian media sources earlier this week, Muizzu stated that we are trying to manage debt and that it was tough to carry out development initiatives. The Maldives are in a precarious condition. Gurjar states there has been concern regarding the country's susceptibility to Chinese debt trap diplomacy. Should it continue to borrow, this vulnerability would only increase. It is a tiny country with a tiny population that depends on tourists after all. Concerns concerning the Maldives' high debt levels are compounded by worries that the country's primary tourism industry would suffer due to strained relations with India. 3 Maldivian politicians who had anti-Hindu sentiments made harsh remarks about Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, which sparked a diplomatic spat between the two nations. The social media movement Boycott Maldives gained traction in India, which last year saw the highest number of tourists flocking to the country's lush beaches. Muizzu has urged China to increase the number of visitors to the nation.